Well, I tried to get this out before the World Series tonight, but I figure you're not going to be watching anyway because after last night's game, I mean, it can't possibly top that. So, I mean, how can you top it? You'd have to have like a no-hitter or something. And there's no such thing as a no-hitter anymore, right? Because you have 12 pitchers or something to go 9 innings. Well, okay, let's get into the Tesla news, which is darn near as exciting as that Grand Slam walk-off. Okay, so AJ says he hopes to publish his final fourth quarter estimate by Sunday. He was on uh, uh, when was that? Friday in the middle of the day. If you want to go back and look at his conversation, I'm not going to put a card up. You can go back and get it out of the YouTube. Just put in his name. I think it'll come up. Anyway, AJ. So his estimate then was around 92, but he said, well, I think it's going to end up at 95. And so now he's repeating that. He's at 95 cents. Now, what we didn't talk about is that if the street buys, or if investors kind of generally buy 95 cents for the fourth quarter, and then you add in Elon's 20 to 30% increase for vehicles in 2025 and 100% increase in energy storage profits, we could be back to 400 by year end. We can be back to all-time highs by this year end. Okay. I mean, that would not be ridiculous. You'd be talking about maybe an 80 PE in order to get 84, based on forward earnings, you'd be talking about an 80 PE. Okay. So it's not crazy. Then I was just listening to the other competitor. Between me and him were the two biggest Uber bulls, Warren Redlick, with wild and crazy expectations, some of which appear to about to become true. Anyway, Warren was on Herbert's show, and it turns out that he and Herbert were agreeing that the street will begin to realize the reality around Tesla, the big reality around Tesla, around the third quarter of 2025. Who's been saying that for 18 months? I've been talking about 2026 being the year when it all comes together. And I've been talking about the fact that by the third or fourth quarter of 2025, people will begin to get it. And that's when we'll get the really big run up. Okay. And I've been predicting $700 for the year end next year. I hold by that number. It might even be higher. Then in 2026, the number's so crazy that I don't even want to say it out loud. I can't even speculate. I really can't. I really can't get my arms around what the 2026 price target might be. We'll know more about that, I think, if in fact robotaxis start rolling out in the middle of this next year. All right, so there were tons of questions that were answered last Wednesday, including the shocking news. It wasn't, an answer to a question. We had multiple, shocks. Maybe the biggest one was robotaxi rides being offered already in the San Francisco Bay Area to the Tesla employees, even though there's a safety driver, of course. That was an added bonus, and there was others like that. But I'm sure you were left with a few questions that didn't get answered, or possibly some new questions that were created by those answers. I certainly did. Here are my top 9. What is the what is the Generation 2.5 vehicle? Exactly what is it? Is it a hatchback? Is it a smaller version of a Model 3 with less accoutrement? Number 2, will Juniper be launched in the market simultaneously all over the world, or in one market, and then the next, and then the next? I'm predicting right now it'll be China, then the US, and then Berlin. Number 3, how does the customer base for Megapack in China differ from the customer base for the US production? And also, will the pricing be the same in China as it is here? About $1 million for the regular Megapack. Number 4, how many supervisors per each Optimus bot will be required in the beginning, in the first year, let's say, while they're still in the Tesla factories? Larry Goldberg thinks it might be as many as one Tesla or one employee overseeing one bot. Other people think it might be 1/3 or 4 in the beginning, and then later it'll be, maybe one supervisor for each 10. What does Tesla think? What are they seeing? It's very, very important question. This is one that we got to keep at the top of our minds as we go forward. Maybe some of the other robot manufacturers have an idea too. I'm going to start paying very close attention, because if it's one supervisor for one, that's expensive. But man, if it's 1 for 5 or 1 for 10, that is going to make a massive, massive difference. All right, then question 5, how much will Tesla charge for FSD and for mileage in the private robotaxi fleet? Is it going to be 10%, 15%? What is the percentage? And will there be a one-time fee for FSD if you're going to use it commercially? Number 6, how many 4680 lines are still planned for Reno? Is it still 500 gigawatt hours? Is that still what they're planning for? And what is the timeline? Some kind of an idea of how that ramp is going to look. Are we looking for that as something that might be completed in 2026, starting in 2025? What's going on with that Reno ramp? A very related item, beginning of the production. When will the beginning of the CATL lines in Reno happen? And will that ramp quickly? Is that going to be something that we'll see that 40 gigawatt hours soon, or is it going to take a long time? So that's number 7. Number 8, speaking of baseball, what's the ballpark run rate for Cybertruck as of January 1st, 2025? Are we going to be looking at 3,000 a week, 4,000 a week? Where is Tesla going to be around the beginning of the year next year on Cybertruck? Number 9. Oh, there's 10 of these. Look at that. 9. Wouldn't you expect to sell out Elon or one of the other execs? Wouldn't you guys expect to sell out every factory at 100% full capacity of every possible car you could pump out if FSD becomes unsupervised? Seems to me that would create a value proposition that would have people lined up to get the cars. Isn't that how you see it? And then number 10, is GigaMex off the table? Has it disappeared? Are we just going to have a beautiful piece of property down there, maybe put a resort up? What's going on with GigaMex? All right. This comes from Barron's. The regulations surrounding credit sales are, meaning the reg credit sales, the regulatory credit sales, the CO2 credits, whatever you call them. The regulations surrounding those sales are myriad and arcane, so projecting them is nearly impossible. But some comments from Ford Motor and General Motors help investors understand the trend. From Ford, there is a lot of pressure on environmental compliance, said Ford CEO Jim Farley. The lower U.S. demand for EVs means that CO2 credits are now likely to be going on. They're going to be needed for fleet flexibility and optionality and will be a critical strategy choice for any company. He sees it long term. In other words, compliance is driving decisions about what cars to make. GM said, a little more specific, said, EVs generate significant compliance benefits for greenhouse gas and corporate average fuel economy, and in some cases, California greenhouse gas and zero emissions vehicle regulations, said CFO Paul Jacobson. On average, each of our EVs represents between 2,000 and 4,000 of credit value. Holy mackerel. Now, Tesla generated $739 million in credit sales in the third quarter alone, or about $1,600 per vehicle. That's up from $300 per vehicle year over year. Wow. Credits are getting more valuable. That isn't about to change. Consider California and its Advanced Clean Cars 2 standard. For the 2026 model year, it requires that automakers turn in ZEV credits generated by selling EVs equal to about 35% of the sales in the state. If a car maker sells 100 cars in California, the state government will want to see 35 credits. The 35% level is up from 22 for the model year 2025. Going from 22 to 35 seems significant, but the reality is even harsher. Automakers currently get 4 credits for each EV sold. Sell 100 cars, only 6 need to be EVs. Those would generate 24 credits, representing 24% of total sales, meeting the standard. But that multiplier ends for model year 2026, explains Matthew Rednick, GM's Director of Climate, Environment, and Energy Policy. The penalty for non-compliance for model year 2026 cars and later is $20,000 per ZEV, up from $5,000 for 2025 model year cars and earlier. Remember, California is either the fourth or fifth biggest economy in the world. Companies have years to make up deficits, moving the value of credits and penalties around. GM, for its part, has accumulated excess credits by selling more EVs than required. It isn't a buyer right now of California ZEV credits. There are also penalties for not meeting federal corporate average fuel economy or CAFE standards. Currently, the penalty is $17 per tenth of a mile per gallon missed per car. That's a mouthful. If an automaker sold 1 million cars and missed fuel economy standards by 1 gallon, its fine would be $170 million. The CAFE standards for 2023 passenger cars is 54.5 miles per gallon. That's growing to 91.6 miles per gallon for 2031. Those are just two examples of how fines and credits work. Both imply growth for the ZEV credit business. Tesla is going to be generating billions in credit sales for years to come. This has been a point that's been made by several people in the community. I thought that Barron's did a very good job of just laying it right out there. All right, this is Randy Kirk. Hit like, subscribe, notify. Tomorrow morning, I will do part 2 of my 2025 analysis, where I'm going into the nitty-gritty by product line, each product, each category, looking at what it all means and what some of the dollars are going to be involved. So you want to look for part 2 tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow night, we've got our regular Monday night program, Monday morning program, which occurs on Sunday night. The week before elections, you think it would be a time when you'd want to hear a little bit about what I and others are saying about expectations for the stock market and for the economy in the week before the elections. Yeah, I think so. It's just saying. All right, no one can predict the future with certainty. But when it comes to forecasting the economy, Christopher Baroud has a startling track record. Bloomberg, where this article came from, has ranked the chief economist and strategist at Market Securities Monaco the top U.S. forecaster every year, except once since 2012. Now, that's a pretty good record. In the quarterly standings, Baroud clinched the top spot again for the third quarter of 2024. Right now, he has his sights set on the U.S. election with its high stakes and wide range of economic possibilities. It's a tight race with two very different candidates who had produced very different policy outcomes. Perhaps the question that's even bigger than who the next president will be is how much power will they yield? No matter how small or grand they seem, policies are hard to pass without a majority in Congress. So Baroud expects U.S. growth to accelerate once the results are in, and regardless of who gets elected, he said in an interview, "How come I'm not winning? How come I'm not getting the prize? How many months have I been saying that?" Okay. Anyway, this is because uncertainty has spooked growth as corporations halted big decisions around CapEx and hiring. Additionally, numerous adverse events, including union strikes and weather conditions like hurricanes, put a damper on things. Okay. Overall, he says U.S. GDP growth will run stronger than consensus forecast. This means that 2024's expected rate of 2.6 would come in at 2.7. Well, that's not much of a bump. And 2025's consensus of 1.8 would be closer to 2.1. I think it's going to be much stronger than that. And if I'm right, I win. And Bloomberg has to give me the prize. The third scenario. Okay, so now he presents some various different scenarios. I'm not providing all 4 or 5, whatever, of these different scenarios because he has one scenario he considers to be the one that's going to happen. So why give you all the rest of, I'm going to go with the top one, all right? The third scenario is a Trump win with a Republican sweep, which Baroud believes is the most likely outcome. He expects Republicans to take the Senate. Says the House is a little closer to a toss-up, not quite as clear, but he believes that the most likely outcome is a complete sweep. If Trump does gain a majority, it would enable him to implement tax cuts for corporations and households. It would also cause him to focus more on domestic policy rather than foreign policy. And in the short time, it would have a positive effect on the U.S. economic growth, creating a GDP growth boost in 2025 between 2.1 and 2.3. Once again, I think we would be talking about a boost much greater than that. We might be talking about over 3%, not in the first quarter. Yeah, not in the first quarter, but by the second to third quarter, I think we'd be over 3% growth. That doesn't even count the productivity gains that are coming, which I think we'll start to see this year. However, there's a bigger problem. Baroud's heavyweight clients, which include big banks, hedge funds, and pension funds, are increasingly asking him about the trajectory of the ballooning U.S. deficit. Again, I should win the prize. I started talking to you about this a week or so ago, is that I'm seeing a trend. Overall, people are starting to really be concerned about the deficit, and they're starting to be concerned about the Social Security problem in 2033. At the center of that concern is how big the deficit can get if Trump is elected and implements tax cuts resulting in U.S. revenue shortfalls, and how it could impact the 10-year. So he goes on to say, and apparently he believes that in the short term, this would stimulate the economy, but in the long term, he thinks it might eventually be a problem. For that, he has a few modeled projections. In the case of a Trump win, he expects an initial shock jump on the 10-year yield, shock jump, okay, a jump on the 10-year yield to at least 4.5%. Well, we're sitting at 4.2 right now. If he doesn't get a majority in Congress, then longer term, the yield could move an additional 15 basis points to more like 4.35%. If there's a Republican sweep, then it would be followed by a gradual move up to 5% as investors seek a higher risk premium. That would be especially the case if he cuts immigration in a healthy labor market, causing potential further inflation there. I think that what's going to happen, I think everybody's going to be shocked by this. I think very early in the administration, there's going to be a complete revision of immigration policy. It'll pass Congress because you'll have the Republicans, the Democrats will go along. Anyway, I think we'll see immigration numbers will be very strong. We'll have a lot of immigrants coming in, but they will be vetted and they will be quality. I highly recommend that you go back now and look at my video from this morning, where I started looking at the details of the 2025 year, line by line, product by product. There is the card. Tomorrow morning will be part 2 of that analysis. And of course, as I mentioned on Sunday night, we'll have Monday morning, which you can try to squeeze in between the football games. Okay. Anyway, hope you enjoy the World Series tonight. In the meantime, it's been great talking to you.